In this video, I'm going to show you how to allocate elevated access rights to users. So whenever a user is created on Chihako, whether they're a student, a guardian, a parent, they will be created and added to the system with standard access rights. So a student, for example, when they're created, they'll have the rights to do everything that a student should be able to do, which is access e-learning materials, send and receive messages, etc. Same thing with an employee. When you create an employee and you allocate them to a department, it doesn't give them elevated access to change anything in that department. Rather, they've just been allocated to a department and they can do normal things that any employee can do, such as access their payroll. They can also send and receive messages, etc. And the same applies for guardians. So if you add a guardian to the system, they will have normal access as a guardian to access the information for their dependent. So if they want to see the scores and the performance of their dependent, they can see that. If they want to see the outstanding invoices for their dependent, they can see that. So those are just normal access rights that these different types of users get by virtue of them being added to the system and being allocated to specific subjects, departments, dependents, etc. But let's say there's a user that you want to give extra access rights so that they can do other things that other users on the system can't do. This is where you then need to give them elevated access rights. So we'll take a quick look at those right now. So right now I'm on my dashboard, and let's say I want to give elevated access rights to a specific user. All I need to do is go to the user's profile to start off with. So obviously I can use the search here, or I can go to the user's profile from there. So here I'm going to go into employees and I'm going to find a random user. So Elizabeth. So I'm going to click on the edit user record. And when I click edit, you'll see that it takes me to a page where I can edit their profile. And then on the top right hand corner of the screen, if I click on options, you can see that there's an option that I have here which says access rights. So if I click that, now you see that it takes me to a page where I can edit the access rights for this specific user. So the access rights on Chihako overall are broken down into three key levels. So level 1 is institution level access. Think of this as kind of the highest level of access, where a user can see anything inside the institution. So this is the kind of access right that would generally be given to someone like a high-level administrator who should be able to see everything that's going on in the system, or the head teacher, etc. Then here you've got department level access. So as the name suggests, this is access to a specific department and getting elevated access rights for that. So as I mentioned before, when you create an employee and you allocate the employee to a department, that is just adding an employee to a department and just saying Bob works for this department or Bob is in this department. And by you doing that, if there are any announcements that are department specific, Bob will get the announcement, etc. But let's say you want Bob to be able to do more things on the department level. Let's say you want them to be able to edit the department profile. You want to be able to make them, you want them to be able to create announcements and do various other specialized features for their specific department. That's where you go in and give them department level access, right? And then subject level access, again, as the name suggests, is elevated access to a specific subject. So using the previous example, you can allocate a student to a subject so that they're studying that subject. It doesn't then mean that the student can edit the subject profile. It doesn't mean that the student can create announcements and do other things. If you were to allocate a teacher into a subject as a teacher, again, all that the teacher's doing is they are a teacher in that subject, and they can do what a teacher should normally be able to do within a subject. But then elevated rights, such as being able to edit the subject profile, being able to create announcements, being able to create classes or lessons within a subject, etc. Those are all elevated access rights that the teacher won't have. So if you want to give the teacher that level of access, then again, you can give them subject level access from this menu item here. So okay, so we've given an overview of what the 3 different levels or layers of access are. But now, for each layer of access, there is a further breakdown of more access levels. So if we click on institution here, we can see that we can give Elizabeth institution level access. So we can start off and say the access rights are currently active. But you'll see here there is a drop-down list that says access level. So there are generally 4 access levels within each of these top-level access rights. So for institution, a user can be allocated with institution-level access as a reader, an admin, admin plus, or a super administrator. In departments, a user can be allocated as a department level user with read or reader, admin, admin plus, and super admin access. And then for subject, again, subjects again are broken down to subject level access as a reader, admin, admin plus, or super administrator. Now, what these different levels of access mean is actually covered in this section. So if you click on the help button here, you'll see that a little box will pop up. And this box basically explains in some level of detail what I've just explained. So you can see that there are the 3 levels of access here. And then you can also see that here is the further breakdown of access within those 3 levels. So reader access means that a user can generally read information that is contained within that access level. So if I give someone reader access at the institution level, that means that they can read, everything that's in the institution. They can see student records, they can see employee records, parent records, etc. But they cannot change them, and they cannot create new records. They cannot delete them, etc. Someone who's an admin can read and create new records. Someone who's admin plus can read, create, and delete records. And then someone who's a super admin can do anything within that access level. So a super admin within an institution should be able to do anything, whereas a super admin within a department should be able to do anything within that department, etc. So that covers the different access levels. So let's have some examples then. What kind of a user would generally have institution level access? So the administration team within your school will generally need to have very high access privileges, because they are the people that will be giving other people access rights. They'll be the ones administering the student records, the guardian records, etc. So they will need a relatively high level of access at the institution level. So generally, give them institution level access. And if this is a senior administrator, you might want to give them super admin access so that they can edit and change anything within the institution. Or if they are a less senior resource within the administration department, you might just want to give them admin access, because this way they can create and edit records, but they cannot delete records. Only the admin plus administrator will be able to delete records, and also the super admin administrator can do that at the institution level. That's an example of the kind of user that you would give that kind of access at the institution level. Another example is, let's say, board members. So a board member generally will have interest to see the records of students, the records of teachers, etc. But a board member might not need access to create new records or to edit records at the institution level. So what you might give someone who's who's a board member is reader level access at the institution level, right? Now, if we go into department, when we're giving access in the department level, we obviously have to select which department we want to give this user access to. And just like what I showed you with institution level, you need to select, whether the access level is active or not. And then in terms of the access level, again, it's broken down into reader, admin plus, admin, and super admin. So you can give them the level of access you want them to have. And in the same way, if someone is, let's say, a department head for a specific department, you may want to give them elevated access to that department so that they are able to edit the profile of their department, create announcements in their department, and do various things that require elevated access rights. So if I went in and gave Elizabeth department level access as a reader, that would mean they can read anything within that department. So for example, the statistics, department level statistics, Elizabeth will be able to read them. Elizabeth will be able to create and edit information within that department. If I gave them admin plus, they'll be able to delete as well. If I gave them admin, they'd be able to create and edit only, and also to create. So again, similar concept as described in the help section here for the department level access. So as I mentioned, generally the type of person that would have elevated department level access is whoever is the head of that department, whoever you want to give the ability to edit the department profile, to make announcements, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, if we go to the subject level, again, similar to department level, first you select the subject that you want to give this user elevated access rights to. And then once you've selected it, you say, okay, it's active. And then you give them an access level again, reader, admin, admin plus, or super admin. So again, the kind of user that you might want to give elevated access rights to a specific subject is someone who's a subject head. So let's say there's a subject called computing in your school, and 10 teachers teach that subject, but one of the teachers is the senior teacher who is in charge of how that subject is administered. Give them the subject level access, and you may choose to give them super admin access to that subject, or admin plus, whatever you please, based on the description that you see here. So whatever the access level you think that person needs, give them that access level. And this then means, for in my example here, Elizabeth would have access to computing with admin plus privileges. That means they'll be able to create announcements. They'll be able to create classes or lessons. They'll be able to edit the subject profile. They'll be able to delete classes and lessons, or edit classes and lessons, etc. For this specific subject. And again, another thing that I hadn't been covering is that for each of these access levels, you'll see that it will ask for an access start date and an end date. So the start date is obviously the date from which this person can have this level of access. Then the end date is by when they should not have this level of access anymore. So always make it realistic. If you know that you have a part-time teacher who has joined the organization and for whatever reason they need elevated access to a subject, you can allocate them to the subject, but give them access from when their contract starts and to when their contract finishes. And what will happen is that after the access end date has lapsed, the system will automatically lock this person out and they'll no longer be able to carry out that access level. So it's a very good way of making sure that if the administration team ever forgets to remove access from a user, at some point in time that access will expire anyway. So don't go in here and make it, access that will expire in year 2090 or something. Because it will mean that the access will just run up to year 2090. Give this user, a realistic window. So I'll say Elizabeth gets the privilege of the subject level access for, let's say, let's say 3 years, up until year 2020. And if we get to year 2020, and Elizabeth still requires subject level access for this subject, then we can just go back into the system and extend that level of access as well. So that's a quick overview of of what user access rights are on Chihako, and generally the kinds of users you want to give different types of access in this system. So right now I'm going to give Elizabeth access rights as to the computing subject in particular, and I'm going to leave the user access rights notes section empty. I'm going to click grant access, and you'll see that it now says successfully updated. Now you can see the current access rights that Elizabeth has. She has access to the computing department. If I click that, you can see I can now edit this if I want to change anything here, and then I can click update. Or if it's come to a point where actually I just want to delete Elizabeth's access to this subject, I can also delete it here. Or if I want to temporarily make it inactive, I can change the access status to inactive, and I can click update, and Elizabeth will no longer have access to this department. So let me actually do that now. So I've done that, and you can see that her access to computing is now inactive. But let's say I want to make it active again. I can make it active, and then I can click update. Yeah. So what if Elizabeth wants access to another subject? So again, I go to subject level, and then I select the subject active, and I'll make her a reader for this subject. And then let's say the access rights, rather 2018. Yeah, that's the access end date. And then I'm gonna grant her access. So now you see she has subject level access to computing and art and design. So again, if I want to then edit any of these, I can just click into there, and I can go ahead and edit any of this information. But again, a user can have subject level access and department level access as well. So if I go ahead and give her access to the ICT department active, make her a super admin for that. And grant access. Now you can see that Elizabeth has access to computing, art and design, these two subjects, and then this department, which is ICT. In terms of department, in terms of this section, again, it gives me a summary that this person has access to this department and these two subjects. It also tells me the level of access they have for each of those as well. And of course, if I also want to give Elizabeth institution level access, I can do that as well. Okay, so I think that covers everything in terms of how to grant people access to different elements of the system.